So
All right,
you're
do
also
it.
running like you're running like videos on the live stream right now.
Yeah, that was fat fingers. We're good now. Now we're really here. I
Okay.
Oh,
apologize.
we'll have high
There we are.
production value, what they said.
The highest production value. Here it is. Okay, great. So I'll do all that over again with the same jokes and everything. No worries. Um,
Good.
anyway, just as I was saying to no one except for my co-host here, this is the Battle Hymnal. It is a Chapel Bell Curve joint, as we have started to say. It's going to be good for all of us here because these are all fresh faces. Not all fresh voices, but fresh faces for sure. Because if you have been a Chapel Bell Curve listener for the last few years, you really haven't been seeing mine or Nathan's faces, nor would you recognize us on the street. But maybe you would recognize some of the terrible things that comes out of either of our mouths. But now you can see it and hear it come out of our mouths. But before we talk about football, which is what I'm sure you are all here for, we're going to introduce ourselves real quick. I am, of course, Justin from Chapel Bell Curve, of course, and I'm going to hand it over to my my co-hosts, my first longest co-host, Nathan. Who are you, Nathan? Who are you?
And I'm Nathan.
There it is.
There
And who are y'all over there in the other corner? I can kind of point to you each on my screen, but nobody's really gonna. It doesn't look the same for me as it does for everyone else. But who are you?
I'm the guy that screwed up the audio and also dog stats.
Dog stats.
And I am Graham Coffey of Dog Sports.
So
yeah, it's a fun little collaborative group. I do a stats blog for Bulldog Illustrated. I think hopefully anybody who's watching this probably already knows that. But anyway, there it is.
There it is.
And I've become a big fan of Chapel Bell Curve. So it's awesome to be working with you guys.
Likewise.
Pretty jazzed. Pretty jazzed. Yeah. So if those of you that didn't already know, we are I don't know what our relationship or our partnership is with Dog Sports, but we've been on Dog Sports for a little while, been featured there, which has been pretty neat, which is how I guess we met Graham and eventually Dog Stats as well. So it's great that we're all kind of working together. But I'm going to be here and helping to bring us all through all of these little talking points we have here, all about football, because we're trying to make a whole lot out of nothing right now as we grasp at straws that may be or may not be our football season.
Can I pause you like for 2 seconds,
please,
there, Justin?
Yeah.
I do just want to say for all of our dedicated longtime shit posting listeners that we are still making the podcast. It is still going to be on Apple Podcast and on wherever you find podcasts are found. This is just sort of like a supplemental thing. And theoretically, if we had a season, this would allow us to react a little bit quicker in season than we are able to right now, or we have like a very long lead time, whereas this has like 0 lead time. So anyway, carry on.
It takes as long as it does for Nathan to get to the computer. And that's a joke for us because we were all waiting on Nathan to start.
I had to pick a car up. We were down to 0 cars for the past 2 days. 0 cars.
Which helps
all
nobody.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So we want to play, right? Hashtag we want to play.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What the heck is it? Who wants to take us off here?
I mean, it's an appeal from the players of college football that is really about player autonomy and labor that most of Twitter has hijacked into being about playing no matter what the consequences are, if you want my cynical take on it.
It is. There's definitely, it seems, 2 sides. It has become, as anything is, it's a 2-sided issue at this point and they're both kind of translating, it seems, in 2 different ways. One is the players and the other is everyone else. And it seems like everyone else who's fighting for the players to play think that the players just stopped it. We just want to play.
Right.
But that is not the full
movement. I think you're absolutely right. There's a distinction, right? You've got the Trevor Lawrence tweet, which is very straightforward and also low key asked for the establishment of a players representation group, which is a sort of watered down way of saying that he wants a player union. And then, you see this rash of like Zamir White and I think Malik Herring and Georgia players who are just saying we want to play without that. We can talk about any of the individual tweets you want to, but I think the core problem is that, and feel free to input whatever you guys have, Josh and Graham. Hey, I'm drinking fizzy water.
I know it's a live show, so everybody gets all the live goodness.
Yeah, I don't care about any of this. Anyway, I'm joking. Well, my interpretation is that I think that pretty much unequivocally, the safest way to play sports right now is in bubbles. The
Mhm.
issue is if you put college football players in bubbles, you can no longer pretend that they're student athletes, right?
Mhm.
Is that this is the core issue?
Well, that is the core issue, but we also saw yesterday news come down that college basketball is floating the idea of a bubble and looking at doing, I forget the number of teams, but
bubble tournaments or whatever.
Yeah, so it's not that like college football can't do a bubble. It's just that they won't do a bubble because if they were going to do that, they needed to decide it in May, and there's no core leadership with any sort of direction or drive. And here we are kind of floating aimlessly, and we have all these conferences in different situations. I appreciate the cynical take from you, Nathan, and I agree with it to a certain point. But the one thing that was like kind of interesting to me was that like Trevor Lawrence was the guy that, put that tweet out because if the season gets canceled tomorrow, like, he's a multi-millionaire overnight and he still wants to play. It seems like, he would be the last person that would have motivation to want to go play in the age of COVID.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to make a distinction between the we want to play hashtag and also the we are united hashtag, because I felt that it shifted this week from we are united to, oh, we're going to lose our season. And I think the players, as much as they would love to have a player association, as much as they want these rights and protections, chips are on the table right now and they want to play football and they want to play sports and basketball. I would imagine if you ask every student athlete on campuses, they want to play. And especially, I mean, there are some that are opting out, but regardless, I think the majority of them want to play. And I think that, and we talk about this sort of going back in the messages, is like there lies the problem with a player association. Is your player association, aka union, is only as strong as its members. And I just think that in a 4 to 5, 6 year window in some situations is a small window, and that does not build a strong association. And these guys, it's too many jobs, too few jobs with too many players. And I don't ever really see a strong union coming about from player associations. I think protections are going to have to come from maybe legislation, maybe laws, maybe maybe the NCAA. But I just really, as much as it's a feel good story to see these guys getting and using their leverage, I just don't see it actually coming to much fruition.
Well, I think I agree in terms of a strong players association, but I ultimately think that the Trevor Lawrence thing, like you were saying, Josh, I think is a really good example of like, in a weird sort of like, this does not follow. This is a non sequitur in some ways, but it seems like the real leverage is with the individual players.
Yeah.
And if enough individual players say, why don't I have the ability to get representation, it'll happen. Right. Like, and so you're right. I don't think we're ever going to see like a, NCAA LP or whatever. But I do think that like, or NCAA PA, I do think that we will get a lot of the things that they would ask for, just because, I mean, it only takes one Justin Fields or one Trevor Lawrence to say like, hey, we should have this. Why is this happening? For it to happen real damn quick.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's an interesting situation too, because then I appreciate thinking about the scenarios that play out if one or none of the conferences actually play, because we've all talked behind the scenes now off camera about how we're pretty sure that the SEC is going to try to make this happen. I can see a world in which the SEC is the only conference that plays, and the regular fan is sitting there saying,
that's
it's the best one. It's the only one that ever wins the big game. Yada yada yada. That's fine. Yeah, but the issue there. Go ahead.
No, I was totally interrupting you, but I just, to Nathan's point, is like, well, as much as we think and appreciate the leadership of Trevor Lawrence and also Justin Fields' leverage, but Maurice Clarett, I mean, again, they're fighting it not only from the NCAA and from the member institutions, but they're fighting it from the NFL, because the NFL, again, because of that, they have too few jobs for too many players. They're going to push back on that. And I still think that the American way is, if you can get paid to do something, you should be able to get paid. That's capitalism. So this 2-year, 3-year thing. I mean, I know that, baseball has, sort of amended version of that. I mean, but the one and done thing, just let them play basketball. And I think they're going to do that. They're going to go to the G League. They're going to go to international leagues, and but again, we're the tiny percentage of college football players that actually can get paid is pretty small, and I just don't think that dynamic is going to lead to a really strong player union.
Well, I mean, the other thing and we're getting kind of far afield here, and we should go back to the rundown, but I will say the other thing is that the NCAA is just not going to win another court case. I mean, they're not. They just lost basically most of the rules that regulate how, like, literally this week they lost a case wherein basically the judge said that most of the rules that regulate player compensation cannot be enforced, academically especially. So, like, they're just not going to win again. And so it doesn't even really take a Justin Fields. It just takes it takes Tom Mars, because that's what's going to, I mean, Tom Mars is already signaling that if they try to play this year, like, the SEC is getting the shit suit out of it.
Yeah,
like, that's already on, like, that's on the table already. Like,
well, I mean, that's Tom Mars too. He's gonna, I mean, I really do want to do like a legal episode. Maybe we can get the senator and maybe Jeremy on too to talk about that stuff. But all right, so are we comfortable with UGA playing? We want football, right? So are we comfortable with these players coming and playing football in these conditions?
Before we go too far, I do want to talk about like the scenario of this, because it gets into that player safety as well, and whether or not we want UGA to play, because if they do play, I guess then there's an argument to be said about, they got their chance to play. They don't need additional eligibility, because if they give everybody additional eligibility and a number of players stay, what happens to the players that are coming up in 2021? What happens around the league? Because there's a bunch of, the Big Ten, you have the Pac12 that have already said they're not going to play. And all those players are a good majority of those players that needed an extra year or two are going to stay, whereas all the SEC players are going to keep moving. And so in those leagues, they're going to lose further talent because they have players that are already there. The SEC is going to continue moving on their players. Granted, nothing terrible happens to the players that continue to play, if they're in a bubble or not.
But the
and so what, it kind of, it messes up the entire talent economy, I guess. It
does totally disrupt the economy. But I would say, if everybody gets an extra year, the natural outflow of that is that everyone is going to have Bear Bryant's roster from like 1960, where everyone has like 125 players. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And then you're right, like the incentives that go along with recruiting are really going to change, because it's going to be like, well, we don't really need someone who's a 3-star. If you're Georgia and you need a 3-star cornerback just to fill out the class, if you kept 3 cornerbacks that were supposed to graduate last year, like, probably not. So in that sense, yes, it does change things. But I also think, that ultimately the coaches are going to get as much competitive advantage out of this as possible. And I cannot imagine that Georgia has 85 players on scholarship next year. Like,
I'm gonna play this Matthew Brown interview on CNN, and just because I've worked really hard on it, and we're gonna do this. Is that cool with you guys?
Yeah.
Here we go. All right.
Georgia's SEC. So far, you guys are good to go. What is your reaction to the Big Ten postponing its entire fall season? The commissioner said it became, quote unquote, abundantly clear that it was too much of a health risk. What do you think about that?
Personally, I think it's just kind of, with so much uncertainty going around, it's just it's nice to have somebody make some decision in regards to football. But with Coach Smart, he's been teaching us that we just have to stay ready whenever the call comes. If it's time to play, we'll be ready to play. And if you stay prepared, you won't have to prepare for the season. And that's just our mission and our focus. That's what's going to be the case for the next few weeks too.
I see you're already in Athens. You're ready to roll if the call comes down to play. But how do you feel personally, Matthew? Just given all of the potential risks, are you willing to risk it to play?
Personally, there's risks with everything. There's risk with football. There's risk with driving a car. But with my faith, I'm supposed to live my life without fear. And with our medical staff, I'm sure that I have the confidence that they're going to take care of our team. And with Coach Smart and the leadership group,
Matthew Brown clearly
stay disciplined, follow the protocols.
Process at Georgia,
and I feel like
and feels comfortable with it.
Yeah, this is the best spot for us to be in terms of not contracting the virus and following the guidelines.
We all want to play. The players want to play.
So
can do it safely.
In terms of being a risk, and
chime in. I know you guys
and so we'll be here and
talking the whole time.
No, you're good. I think that the really difficult thing about this whole situation is every single player has at least a social media platform. Matthew Brown plays for Georgia. I'm going to probably make myself look not educated here, but like I had not heard of him until this week.
He's a walk-on, yeah.
Okay, so that makes me feel better. But still, my point being, whatever side wants to manipulate the argument in their direction, whether or not it's we should play or it's unsafe to play, there's going to be some guy on Twitter that's a football player that is going to give them the ammunition. And, it's like it's really hard to say if it's safe or not because everyone has different value judgments for different things in life. And, you may have a guy that really values the chance to get 10 games in this year and possibly, come up the NFL draft boards and raise his stock. You may have a guy that knows he's going to be a top 5 pick already. And, the risk of long-term damage from COVID is not worth it. But, each school I know is doing different protocols. And within that, it's, each player has a different experience of how safe those protocols are. We saw that with Florida State yesterday. We have one guy calling out the school for not being safe. We have other people defending the school. And it's clear as mud, basically, to try and kind of see through all that. And so the answer to your question, is it safe to play? I don't know. I do buy that there is probably a lot of guys that have situations where they might be safer at school and, in the athletic facilities than they would be at home. But
I think that's clear. I do feel strongly that these players, I know it changes once toe meets leather, but they're being treated, and they are, for the majority, it's certainly the Power 5 SEC level. They're in their safest possible place. Now
yeah,
where they go on Thursday, wherever they go on Thursday nights, I don't know. But
I guess I find a lot of the arguments, not from you guys, but just in general, to be kind of reductive, because I agree. But given that basically the NCAA can't regulate academic benefits right now, there's no reason that if we don't have a season, those kids have to leave. There just is not. Those kids are staying around. Do you think those kids leave the athletic facility in the summer when it's technically closed? No. So, but I agree. I think that you have to take student safety into account. But my biggest frustration with the whole argument is that I want to play. I think asking someone if they want to play is sort of like, yeah, everybody wants to. The problem is, like so many decisions in COVID, we're treating a public health decision like a preferential decision. And it's really not a matter of like, of course we all want to play. Not only, I personally, outside of people who work for the actual athletics, like I have as much money as anybody invested in us having a season. Like I literally get paid if we have a season. I sure as hell want to play. But the idea that I know better, or that Nick Saban or Kirby Smart knows better than an epidemiologist, is silly. And that's my frustration with the repurposing of we want to play. I get it from the kids, 100%. Kids have so much on the line, and I want them to be able to have that. But when you see some coach who's like retweeting like, oh, the net media is so negative, the kids want to play. It's like, well, yeah, 17-year-olds want to like snort coke off of their girlfriend, but that doesn't mean they should be able to. Like, well, we all want a lot of things when I'm just saying, we all want a lot of things when we are in college that we good and well shouldn't get.
I think you're projecting. All right. So one of the options, I think it's safe to say the Big Ten is reeling from the blowback from their what seemingly first to cancel, and let's spin it back to football. And they're anxious to play. They're anxious about losing recruiting, and it's so. What do we feel about spring ball?
Yeah, y'all want to wake up real early in February. 6 a.m, put the table outside, your old dirty couch, and hang out with your boys and crack open a cold one. February morning.
Yeah, negative recruiting is already taking place.
All right. So, I want to address fan experience here in a second, but I will say most people I talk to says that everything I've read is that negative recruiting after a certain point just doesn't work. Like it works. But like, are you really going to negative recruit Ohio State out of a recruit who is on so much fire right now?
Well, apparently people are.
But I know they're doing it. I question whether or not that's going to work.
Well, yeah, but forget Ohio State. Think about, I don't know, like Michigan State. or Michigan or somebody that's, you know, kind of in that next tier. I do think that perception is reality. And, you know, these kids, like, you have no idea what the fuck they consume. You know, they might follow whoever on Twitter and they might read it. And yeah, exactly. You shall not be named. They follow him on Twitter. And then they read that and they're like, oh, you know, the Big Ten doesn't care about football. I don't want to go play there. Who knows?
I mean, Urban Meyer says there's no chance of playing college football in the spring. And Ryan Day is on the other side saying he wants high school players to come play their football season, high school football season, then come in spring. January for an 8-game season.
That is the biggest crock of bullshit in this entire thing.
Yeah.
If we're sitting here caring about player safety and player health and long-term effects of what's going to happen over the course of the next academic year, putting a football player through potentially 25 to 30 games in a calendar year, like, that is not doable. The body does not recover like that. It takes months and months and months for football.
I know we don't have this on the rundown, but have you guys seen the Jeff Brom thing?
No.
Purdue's coaches put out this like proposed spring thing that basically posits that the only way to do spring ball is to play 8 games in the spring and then cut the season next year.
Oh,
which
wow.
That's not self-serving at all.
8 games in the spring and then 10 games in the fall. And the only reason this isn't on our rundown is I just saw it. But I agree. You're not going to get 25 games in. And the thing, I guess, that I want to come back around to, I haven't ranted about fan experience, but that's not really a big a deal. I do get a little bit miffed when fans are like, but it's so hard to carry football now. And it's like, just all of you fans who could just watch the game, you're so spoiled. Anyway,
I do want to talk about that though. Like, so I know, for instance, what I've read so far about the AD and everybody at UGA kind of talking about the fan experience. Right now, they're floating a lot of options. And they haven't gone any which way necessarily, but floating a lot of options between having 18,000 to 30,000 fans in the stadium in order to adhere to social distancing guidelines. I haven't heard anything about the red coat ban. So Nathan, you might be able to speak to that. And if y'all have heard anything else about just fan experience in general, I know living in Athens, nobody here is particularly excited to have an additional 100,000 people in town. At, any given weekend, but I want to hear what y'all think about those things too.
I'll go last because this kind of I want to pivot off of this onto another point. So y'all go ahead.
I mean, honestly, like, we know that masks work, right? Like, I think that we have kind of, had enough time now to say that that's pretty factual. If you're going to put people in there and you're going to make them wear masks and you're going to make them stay with their parties and sit, 6 to 10 feet apart, fine. Like, throw them in there. I mean, I don't have a huge issue with it. The thing that's probably going to be the reason why Georgia doesn't do it, though, is the massive shit show that it's going to create with all the donors over who gets tickets, whether it's based on lifetime points, whether it's based on what you donated for that calendar year, how that all shakes out. Somebody's going to get screwed. People are going to get mad, and it's not going to be good for business going forward for the athletic department. So their best course of action, in my opinion, is just to say no one can come, because it kind of solves a bigger problem in terms of, keeping the dollars flowing in.
All right. So pivoting.
Nathan, please.
Nathan, pivot into what you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say that something we haven't addressed, and that Josh, you kind of were Graham, you just kind of touched on, is there's a very big difference in plans and reality. And like, the thing I think about fan experience is that it's all well and good for the SEC to say, yeah, we're playing. But I think the SEC is going to run into a problem that a lot of organizations have had in this, is that once you say you're doing something, you then have to handle the PR load as more and more people get sick. So the question is just, and this is I'm trying not to be mean spirited here, but and because God knows I want him to play, but the question just becomes like, how many players, because like, if we do this, we are going to have teams have to forfeit games because of outbreaks. Like, that is just, and not even outbreaks where people get really sick. Just like, if you have 50 people on your team quarantined, can you play? You know what I mean? So the question just becomes, how many games can they really get through? And that I think is kind of a similar thing for spring football. It's like, it's really great to say that you want to play spring football. But I think Urban Meyer, who I hate, his perspective of saying no chance might kind of be, there might be some wisdom in that, because like, how many games are you actually going to get in is the better question.
Well, I mean, like so many, now the stories are coming out, well, the ACC knew about, the heart condition, and Cole Kubik had that great, saying we've been studying the heart for a long time in the South. It's not, so these mitigating factors seem to be actually a plan for them in place. So how sick do they get? I mean, I guess I'm not an expert, but I think that there's plans in place to make this safe. And I want to see it played. I don't want to see anybody get sick. I mean, I'm a gullible dude and a very half full person. I just think that God, these doctors say it's safe. If they say it's safe, if we've got ACC doctors and SEC doctors and Big 12 doctors saying it's safe, and we've thought about this, we know about this, let's do it. I don't want the players to sign away their rights, but but let's give them a shot. Let's do it.
I mean, we've had MDs clearing people through percussion protocol for like 10 years now, and I don't know how safe football is. I guess just my personal, I am not in a half full mode right now, but I agree in principle. Graham, what were you going to say?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I mean, like, I think that's the most frustrating part of all this is what's the data that the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are looking at that the SEC.
Pac-12 is not looking at anything. Pac-12 is just following the Big Ten. Sorry.
Well, I mean, but no, when the Pac-12 had their press conference, Larry Scott and whoever else they ran out there, they said at the time, we became aware of, I believe the quote was like, very alarming data. It's like, well, okay, like, shouldn't the CDC be breaking that news to me, or, the government, or not a fucking college athletic conference? I mean, like,
I think. Go ahead. No. I was going to say, I think there's two separate sets of data. I agree, Josh, that yes, in a vacuum, like if we had a magical world where we could just pay players and we could just say schools are going online, we're keeping the players at campus, we're going to keep them safe. Hell yeah, play on, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the data that they're seeing that's probably confusing and scary is if you have an outbreak at UGA, you're not keeping it inside of the football, the football arena, right? Because you're right. Most of these kids who are 18, 19, like they're not going to even they're going to be fine. But like, I think they're worried about the liability of like, what happens if one of your donors dies?
Yeah.
And he was near a practice. What happens if you have a student die after going to a game? And I think that a lot of, having spoken to some people who are like making decisions at the secondary level, I think a lot of the problem is that like nobody knows how these liability issues are going to be worked out, because like it's very likely that a liability case from what I've heard, is going to go to the Supreme Court. Well, so like,
yeah.
Well, I think that's why
we've also got Michigan State playing intramural sports. So
I mean, yeah, I do have a huge issue with that though. It's like, okay, where's why is that okay and college football is not okay? And it's like, why is it okay that they're going to continue to practice 20 hours a week in the Big Ten?
Yeah.
If it's that big a deal.
Yeah.
And ultimately all the conferences might cancel. I would say it's probably more likely than not that they will all cancel. But like, what was the purpose of, not kicking that can down the road if you're the Big Ten? It's like, there was no reason they had to make a decision this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't know about. Yeah. That is the question. The timing does seem, I mean, you're right. I think we're bowing to the inevitable, but the timing does seem sort of weird. Like, why couldn't you just?
Well, I think he had the votes right then and did not want to lose the votes. I think he wanted and felt it was making the decision was to be safe, and he did not want this week to happen, and those votes and that majority start to waver. Yeah, you laughing at all my mistakes over there, Justin?
No, I was laughing at whatever Nathan was just super excited about off screen.
I have a little kitten, and he just walked in here.
All right, it was like the best thing that could ever happen to Nathan.
I think the kitten coming in and should pivot us to some football, because we got a
great segue.
We got some good news and some bad news from Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Kelly
we
Ringo.
have late breaking bad news, but go ahead.
What's the late breaking
great.
bad news?
Apparently, Hudson Mason is reporting that Jamie Newman has a foot injury.
What?
Well,
Son
yes, we'll use one of our other mini QBs.
I just saw that on the Senator.
I mean,
Well,
Look
I
at
would like
check
to
that
put
out for a second, though.
one more time, real quickly. You know, I did the Dog Sports article a couple weeks ago where I used NCAA 14 and simulated the season with both Newman and Daniels. There's a very small variable between the two of them, though the running threat that Newman brings does open up a lot more. Totally different conversation we can have later. But I think we're fine even without Newman. We just got to keep one of those dudes in bubble wrap and in a giant 100 mask.
Okay, so it looks like there was a mild foot sprain and he's back to 100% according to.
So you just like fucking took me on an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, that was
because Hudson Mason is out here like scooping people willy nilly.
But he's also kind of, you know, like.
All right. Well, Kelly Ringo was reported by
the spectrum.
247 had the Kelly Ringo injury, a shoulder injury, out several weeks to months. And he was, you know, we're deep at defensive back, but that was somebody I think everyone wanted to see play.
We were super excited about that guy. Our sweet,
Yeah.
very large, powerful boy.
My 6'5", large.
I mean, I think
corner son.
We've had several of these high profile big corners come in and get hurt their freshman year and come out and have amazing second year. So it sucks, but I think, you know, we will see a very fully formed product out of him next year.
What do you think of the whole blessing in disguise tweet that he had? I mean, you think he's just like, I don't have to make a decision on this year and I'm good?
I just have to make a decision, and that's pretty great, I imagine.
How I phrase what I'm about to say, which is that I have heard from people I think would know, but am not reporting in any way, that a lot of the players have a pretty strong sense of like, it doesn't really matter what the ACC says, like we're not getting a season in this year. So that was what struck me when we saw those We Want to Play tweets from all the UGA players, is that I had heard from someone who I think would know that there is a sense of like, we're living on borrowed time here. So I don't know if the feeling is just sort of like, well, we'll get a couple of games in and get some tape down, which I guess there's a certain amount of sense to that. But so that might be what he's feeling, is like, well, we're probably not going to have much of a season anyway, and now I don't have to decide whether or not to opt out. And
all right, so if our season's not going to happen or it's going to be short, we better get our Gatorade in early. Graham, you pointed this out. Here we go. The Gators up to number 6 in the preseason poll.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
I just love the fact that you know, the Florida fan sites are, you know, kind of that they're looking for anything, any straw to grasp at. It's like, oh, look, there goes Ohio State, there goes Oregon, or whoever else was ranked in front of them.
Yeah,
number 6, baby. This is our year. We're gonna probably
the
East again. Gonna be great.
This just feels a lot like, you know, preseason rankings don't matter at all. They're only there for heartache, and that's it. And
they never mattered, but this year they really don't matter.
This year they matter even less somehow. It's like when someone says like, I couldn't care less, but they say I could care less. That's what this feels like. Preseason rankings are the equivalent of saying I could care less.
I think I don't want to get into this too hard because I'm trying not to let my heart get its hope up. But like, if I were the kind of person who was doing a like detailed statistical analysis of like the profiles of teams coming in, I just don't know what Florida defensively, they're going to be pretty good. And offensively, I think they'll be passable, but they are Diet Coke Georgia in pretty much every way. Their defense is going to be good, but not as good as Georgia's. Their offense is going to be okay, but is losing so much of their receiving talent and so many of the running back yards. And I just don't get it with Kyle Trask. Like, I just don't get it. Like,
Graham, your point was so spot on that, you know, all these basically just remove 40% of the rosters and 40% of the teams and they go up, because that's what it was for Georgia in the 2000s. Like, oh, some random number 13 team lost, so let's see where Georgia is. Oh, we moved up to 14. I mean, it feels like that.
That was my whole freshman year. We got Matt Stafford at least. We're in the team.
And then Trey Battle turned it all around.
Oh God, that was a great game.
That was fun. But
you know, I was on the end zone sideline, like closest to him when he jumped over that edge. We were like 5 feet apart. Anyway, yeah.
That was good. Good segue or good sidebar.
Like,
no, I think with Florida, it's like they really do remind me a lot of kind of the late Mark Richt era Georgia Bulldogs. They recruit well. They don't recruit super well. They've got a class full of 3 stars and low-ranked 4 stars. Where they're averaged at right now with almost a full class, they'll finish somewhere in the high teens. Yeah, I think they have some good things coming back, but and I will grant that Kyle Trask is a good quarterback, but he is not a transcendent Joe Burrow level quarterback. And that is what he would have to be for them to take the East from Georgia, especially now that A&M is on their schedule. So I will continue to hammer this all year. This has been the theme of my entire offseason, is pointing out that Dan Mullen, his offense has never scored more than 20 points against Kirby Smart in 12 attempts. Just a little, I don't understand why this narrative continues to float in the media that he is an offensive genius, because it's been proven that when he plays teams that have good team speed on defense, he cannot scheme his way around it.
Guess what I was on.
All right. Well, segueing into our first video CBC, Bryce Primordial Goo asked if and when the UGA offense stutters, what will be the cause? More importantly, who will be blamed?
It may be that sprained ankle from Jamie Newman.
Go
ahead.
So if we have an offense, and we're not great. What do you guys see as holding us back on offense? I guess is a good.
I mean, I don't know who's going to get blamed. Probably Brian Schottenheimer. I don't know, but I think. I mean, it's just going to be continuity. I mean, I can't imagine. There's so much talent on this offense, and I don't think even James Coley can mess things up this quickly.
If we almost made it a whole episode without James Coley.
What I'm saying is, even a very good offensive coach could struggle with this team, and it would be explainable. Because
I think where it may not be if we struggle or stutters or whatever. I think that part of the offense that we may not be used to is the running game not being as strong. I'm not sure how healthy. We've got a freshman coming in, and Zamir White's coming off multiple knee injuries. A brand new offensive line and fairly new, almost brand new offensive line coach. So maybe our running game could not be as strong as it's been as we're used to. But it's still going to be great, top 2 or 3 in the conference. But I can see us not being able to run the ball that well, which may affect other parts of the game depending. But we don't know what Monken's going to do. Maybe he's going to be a pass first guy and run pass to set up the run. That'd be nice. That wouldn't bother me. But I think that's where it's gonna be in that turnover on the offensive line coach, and possibly the running game.
I think if you look at the roster and the age of players on the O line, logic would kind of dictate that's where the issues would come from. I do think Monken, as you were alluding to, Josh, I think he's going to pass to set up the run, and that's going to be a lot more how this comes. Which what a novel idea.
I'm drinking to that.
But I think honestly, to me the answer of most likely where they'll stutter will be out of the gate. I think if you look at a lot of Monken's concepts and what he's done well over the years at different stops, he runs a lot of quick timing routes, and I just don't know if that timing is going to be there between Newman and or Daniels and a lot of receivers that they've never played with before and that are young in their own right. So I think, again, we're going to be looking if the receivers are really good, that's going to be a higher ceiling for Georgia. If they're bad, then lower ceiling.
Any more questions on the Twitter feed? That was the only one I got.
Yeah, I didn't see any others. I think that
great segment.
I feel okay about it because I do feel like George Pickens is probably the best NFL prospect regardless of class right now. He's just probably on Georgia. I think he's probably in a raw sort of pure, just on the hoof way, the most talented guy on the team. I'm not saying he's the most important. I'm just saying there are not a lot of guys, as stacked as the defense is, there are not a lot of guys that are George Pickens good at their position right now as a sophomore. So I feel okay, but I do worry about When's the last time we ran like 4 verts or like drag or like mesh? I know. And like those concepts used to be, I mean, 4 verts was like low key at Florida State. Like that was what Mark Richt, like 4 verts and drag. That was his bread and butter. And we just haven't been running that like downfield passing game, especially like all the seam stuff down the middle of the field. So I do wonder about if just the route tree, the comfort with the route trees might also be an issue, especially with interior wide receivers, tight ends, and slot guys like who are just not used to running 20-yard drags or 10-yard outs or whatever, because they've just been running crossing patterns that haven't been thrown to for 2 years.
Go ahead. I was going to pivot into the exciting news. I thought it was really awesome news coming out of the Matthew Stafford.
I'm going to create an on-the-fly segment and put you all on the spot with this. Actually, I want to make this a quick. It's like a bright spots in sports, and there'll be like a little song. It's like bright spots in sports, bright spots in sports. Then Nathan will come over with a bass line and be like, boom, 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 boom. But yeah, I just want to ask.
So we're just going to record what you just did and then put music to it, is what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is my intro to this new segment. It's called Bright Spots in Sports, because that's what we really need right now. But while I'm talking through this, y'all all come up with something, if anything. You don't have to, but think about it a little bit. It can be weird. It can be creative and out of the box, but just a bright spot in the sports world. Mine is the social justice initiative program that UGA Athletics has been putting together. We don't know anything about it yet. That's fine. But what I am excited about it is it's been funded tremendously by Matt Stafford and his wife, and Kirby Smart and his wife, Mary Beth. While we don't know anything about it other than it's meant to be a social justice initiative to help, increase areas of diversity and bring in more inclusion, equity, social justice into the program. That's all we really know. What I do like about it is that I know what the Kirby Smart Foundation has done firsthand here in Athens, and I know that they've done a lot of good work, and they've supported a lot of really great nonprofits. The one I work for, I'm not biased, but they've supported a lot of great initiatives already in this town, and it never hurts to have a bit more money behind all the nonprofits in this town. One thing that we like to joke about, we being people in the nonprofit industry in Athens, is that we're kind of like the nonprofit capital of the world. It seems we have the most nonprofits per capita, I feel, which is a funny way of saying we're one of the the most impoverished counties in the nation. But this is a bright spot in sports moment. So all that to say, pretty jazzed about Matthew Stafford still loving Athens and Kirby Smart Foundation putting something together to push this initiative and bring more awareness in this field, especially as in the sports world, which is something I feel like it just doesn't get enough attention as is. So y'all have any bright spots in sports?
Well, I just piggyback on that. I think the fact that Kirby and Matthew and Stafford are piggybacking onto this momentum, and I think it's great to normalize it for a Georgia fan base. It might be a little resistant of players wearing Black Lives Matters on their jersey or putting it on their socks or their shoes or whatever. And I think that Kirby and Stafford supporting it, and in some fashion, maybe a different brand or whatever it is, I think it's really wonderful. So I'm glad you pointed that out, and I think that's really great. So I'm gonna just steal yours because I'm
just co-opted as your own. Yeah, it is really important. I know a lot of people will probably have a lot to say about it.
I had a fancy graphic that I got to play, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Can I have one?
Yeah.
So if we don't have a season this year, everyone who is horribly socially maladjusted and has had their adult lives revolve around sports the past decade is going to have to do some self-improvement or pick up another hobby, which let's be honest, a lot of us probably need to do that. So that's just an opportunity for you to just grab that bull by the horns, and the thing you've been putting off doing for all this time, that's just college football time now. If you want to learn to play guitar, do it. Let's go.
I want to speak it into the world right now, but I really, really want to do a video series of Nathan tries your fan experiences for himself, because you haven't been to a game as a fan, in the last 15 years of your life or ever?
I went to 2 or 3 games in the 2012 season when I was a grad student and I was out of Redcoats, but I didn't drink because I didn't have any money because I was in grad school. And
I guess what you're trying to say is that that's part of the experience. You didn't really go to a game.
Even when I was tailgating, quote unquote, with some friends, I was still not drinking because I would then have to go at 7:30 to the Redcoat practices. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm so bad at being a fan. I'm so bad at it.
We're gonna try them all for you.
Yeah. I would like. I haven't seen game day live with the sound on in where it's air conditioned. I think ever. Because I didn't do college football before I went to UGA. So my first college football. Well, no, I went to band.
We'll delete that.
No, seriously, I went to a Georgia Tech game in high school for band day.
Delete
and
that.
I wasn't even there for band day. I was just there.
Click.
And when it gets worse. I came to UGA because I was going to go to Auburn, and I got a pretty good scholarship to go to Auburn, and I went and visited there, and I was like, this is very depressing in a tiny town. And so I was panicking, and I realized that I could get hope at UGA. And the first time I went to Athens to UGA's
Not
campus,
ironic.
yeah, the first time I went to UGA's campus was after I got accepted and had accepted and committed, and I was going to audition for Redcoats, and I was like, I like it here. Good, that's good.
Wow. That's good.
I already spent money on it.
Graham, give us some positive energy, Graham.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Give us some positive energy.
You talking about bright spots in sports?
Bright spots in sports.
Yeah, the last I did see an AJC article this morning that I believe Chip Towers put out, and it was basically just kind of piggybacking off of a interview that Kirby Smart had done on radio. But basically, he was just kind of talking about how he's gotten closer to this group of players than any group in the past, and it seems and obviously perception is not always reality, but it seems like Georgia's really taking a concerted effort to talk to these guys and understand, what they're experiencing as young African Americans or young student athletes, or actually no student athlete. I'm not using that word going forward, but young college football players. In that, it's I think Kirby coming from the Saban process tree, I always feel like things get kind of robotic and mechanical, and it's nice to feel like maybe Georgia really is serving these guys in a time with a lot of upheaval and craziness in our world, and making sure that they're heard and making sure that they're comfortable with their surroundings.
I love that. I love that sentiment, because I think one of the coolest things, and if I were king for a day, I would bring back Mark Richt just to be sort of the ambassador and continue on his work with the Paul Oliver Foundation and the Paul Oliver charity, and just the importance of life around football and after football, I think is something that I think UGA is, maybe if they're not leading on, certainly they're proactive on it. And I just think that'd be great. Talking about some of the issues that people face today. And it's not just sports, it's across the spectrum, but sports is often a place where things can be normalized for the public, whether it's be mental health or just social justice, all those things. I mean, sports bring us together. And I think that would be really great if UGA continues to build on these feelings.
Mm-hmm. We have, I guess, all that's left now is the outro.
All right. That was fun, guys. I'm going to play our fancy little graphic that I think I made. Let's see if I don't screw it up. But that was fun. And there it is. Goodbye, guys.